Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I left home in heavy, heavy rain up in the east in Aruka. Was surprised halfway down to see there was no rain. So today we are going to speak about sexually transmitted infections in the mature adult. I see we have a lot of little children here. This is big people talk. So Psalm 139, 141, it says, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. So we are fearfully and wonderfully made. There's a taboo about talking about anything about sex. Even the sexual parts of the body, all that is in being fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay? So I want us to come and get to terms with that. There is nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to be calling strange words for different parts of the body. We were created sexual beings. And this was expressed in the Bible when God told our first parents to multiply and replenish the earth. And we know how we can multiply. Is there any other way? Let's try having other things like artificial insemination and all this kind of thing. But God's way was that a man and a woman would get together so that they would have children. It is sad to know what was expected to bring joy and excitement today sometimes cause grief, pain, and death. You all know that, right? We look at young people and try to give all the warnings and advice. But mature folks, we believe, must know better. You think adults should know better? They ought to. Yeah, we could see young people doing risky things, but we would think adults should be good. Well, sorry to say, it is not always so. Maturity brings its own challenges. Women, for sure, have biological changes such as menopause, and this brings in a lot of problems because we have a reduction of specific hormones, and this causes a reduction in libido and sexual problems. If it is not discussed and attended to in a timely way, it might even cause a breakdown in relationship and family, and it cause family instability. Old age also brings its own problems because elderly people are to only read their Bibles. Isn't that so? Yes, that's how the thought is. From the time you reach like 75 years old. Okay, that is what they believe. Read your Bible and prepare for the soon coming of Christ. Although there may be decreased libido, libido is the feeling for sexual activity. In both persons, the Bible indicates that there is no age limit for sex. You know that? And we can remember the example when Abraham was an old man in his 90s. God must have made a mistake. Yes, because he's too old. And why God would tell him be so fast? Go and interfere with your wife at that age? But that's how the plan was. And once you're alive and breathing, God intends that couples, married couples, continue to have relationships. The idea that sex in mature or older people is not a reality. That's how the young people, I remember having to speak to a group of people on sexual activity in old age. And when I was finished, a lady said, Mom, I wish you would talk to my children, because whenever me and my husband close the door, they're telling us what happened to us. We're too old. Yeah, that is how children are now. They're in your house, but want to give you the orders. Right. So there are certain times that as we mature, there could be big high risks when coming with sexual activity. You were living happily with your wife, and your wife died. Or a wife living with her husband, and he died. This could be a critical period in somebody's life because they feel very lonely, especially men. You notice that? Sometimes a wife dies, and in 3 months, a man marries again. Like you all never heard that up this side? That happens, right? They don't like to be lonely. We women, sometimes we last a very long time, but men, they just cannot stay alone. Why? Because they need like somebody to be, a helper. They want some tea, wifey make it. They feel sick, they call in, go help me rub my foot. While the woman would get up and make her breakfast and do the cooking and do everything even though they're sick. So separation or divorce is the next problem. When we become separated, God wants us to be married till death do us part. But nowadays it's what? Till vex, right? It's till vex do us part. That is what goes on. So separation or divorce, just being separated or divorced, you are vulnerable. Because there are many people just waiting to see a wife not wrong or a husband not wrong. And seduction is wrong, even amongst church members. I don't know if up here is so, but I see it. I am separated and divorced, and I can tell you that it is something that people, once they see you, a day I asked, do you see something mark on my back say man needed? I had to ask them that because people come in telling me things I don't want to hear. I was there and I came out, and I'm happy so. Remarriage is the next problem. You think now after it's time to remarry that you're safe? No. People get so excited about remarriage, they don't take the precautions and checks that they're supposed to. They just go headlong. It's a new relationship and they are happy. And then, well, rape, we can't do anything about that. We know that most women, many women I should say, mostly women are raped. We have men being raped too, you know that? Right. So, that is wrong, and all these things can cause sexually transmitted diseases to come about. Sexually transmitted diseases, or STIs, it is used interchangeably. We use it like that. There's just a slight difference. It's one where you see the disease and where the organism, because it's in your body and the disease isn't shown yet. So you have the infection. That's the only difference. But we use it interchangeably. Anyone we use. Right. So those two things, they are generally acquired by sexual contact. Generally speaking, right? But you can contract an STD without sexual intimacy. Anybody could tell me how? Without having penetration. Somebody said oral. Let us understand the oral. You don't have to have contact to say, when I say contact, penis to vagina contact, right? Somebody is saying oral. Yes. The habits we have now, maybe long ago too, where you can have certain STDs arising or originating in the private part, it can now be transferred to the lips, to the throat, okay? And we have a lot of people, when I was in the center, you have to ask them to be truthful. Let us hear your practice. I know many people think it's, but when you are alone in counsel, you want help. We tell you this is to help you because we might have to take throat swab to get the organism, right? It mightn't be on the private part. Right. So, there are some just touching, just skin to skin touch. you can contract it. Anybody knows anyone like that? Any disease? All right, HPV, right? Yeah, that's genital warts. And herpes, right? There are two types of herpes. We'll come to that just now, right? So the organisms, they either bacteria, virus, parasite that cause sexually transmitted diseases. They pass from person to person, also in the blood. Well, that's the normal way, the semen, the vaginal, or other fluids. But as I was saying, you just have to touch skin, right? Sometimes these infections can be transmitted non-sex. We said that. Mother to child, we didn't talk about that one. Mother to child transmission during pregnancy or childbirth, or through blood transfusions or shared needles, or even from skin to skin contact. The one with blood transfusion, that one we hardly see now. I heard somebody on the TV trying to get some money from the government, saying the person was transfused with HIV blood or some contaminated blood. And I was saying, this person, the test, well, the screening, anybody ever give blood here or try to give blood? It is a very rigorous procedure. They want to make sure, and they do testing of these things. Long ago, you could have get away with it. But nowadays, the way I know they screen, you have to be really, really lying and know you're infected or something like that to really get through. But still, they test it, right? So when I hear people saying they blood transfusion, long ago I told you it used to happen. Because I worked on a ward, and we had given an old woman, she was about 70 years old, and she had a gallbladder surgery. And as we finished the blood, I was the one took down the blood, took her blood pressure, and did all the little screening we have to do after. And the lab lady came running up on the ward with the number, "You all have this blood?" And she was panicking. And she said, "They now got the test. It's full of STS, syphilis." And we transfused the woman with a whole pint of blood with syphilis. And I'm talking about a long time ago. That was when mistakes used to occur. Well, what would we do? Would you go and tell her? No, you're supposed to tell your patient, but those days we didn't used to. So, no, you couldn't tell. You know much things used to go by unknown long time? But now with human rights and all these things, they do not. I believe things happen still and they don't tell to her. But what we did, she was already getting antibiotics. So they were able to put the antibiotics that would cure syphilis one time. So she would know what really went on, you know. But we knew, and it was problems. So screening is important. STDs don't always cause symptoms. So some people could have it and they're walking around. So some people will say, "Oh, this girl looking nice." So she can't be sick at all. And we had this patient in Cora. She was HIV positive. And she was discharged. We spoke to her. We gave her all the advice and everything, the caution. And about 4 months after she came, and she was pregnant. I said, "Ma'am, what is that?" She said, "Well, I went out, and I told them I have HIV." And she said, the fella said, "Well, if you have it, I want it too." That is how people are stupid. They don't know, they don't know. And she said, "And I give it up." So she was sharing it around, and she was bragging. But she said she told them, just like Simona that was in Tobago. You remember? We had this person from where it was, Switzerland or somewhere, a European country. And she was a white woman living in Tobago. And I don't know what happened to our brothers, that they think a white woman's urinary, or I don't know how to put it, but they think their body must be a little better. So she told them, she said she told them that she was infected. And they still went with her because she was white. And so she infected a lot of men in Tobago. And the last thing I think she went back home and I heard she was killed or she died or whatever. So sexually transmitted diseases can have a range of signs and symptoms, including, I said already, no symptoms. So they may go unnoticed until the complications, because if it's not cured, if it's not treated, it could develop into complications that would have lasting effects. So some of these signs and symptoms include sores or bumps on the genitals or in the oral or rectal area, painful or burning urination, discharge from the penis, unusual or odd smelling vaginal discharge, unusual vaginal bleeding, pain during sex, sore swollen lymph nodes, particularly in the groin, but sometimes more widespread, lower back abdominal pain, fever, rash over the trunk, hands and feet, you have rash. Signs and symptoms may appear a few days after exposure, or it may take years before you have any noticeable problem, depending on the organism. So let us see about these diseases now. They are categorized. Now long ago you used to hear about one or two, right? Everybody hear about the syphilis. And then there was one before that, or before our times, there was one called yaws. Anybody ever heard about yaws? Yeah, and it used to leave some little mark on your foot. I really never saw any patient while I worked there with it, but we saw the mark because you have like a scar or something. It was like somebody with a scar on their foot, and they said that is because of yaws. But to see you seen it now, when I worked there, no. But now there are over 30 sexually transmitted diseases. How many now? Over 30. Imagine scabies and all is being categorized as that. Yes, because when you go to have sexual activity, body is going to touch, right? Let us say you don't have on clothes, and you have, so if the person has scabies or anything, if they have warts, whatever, as it touches, that is why I always tell people, I am one who didn't like to bathe plenty, I must admit. You see? The cold water, especially if it's cold water. So I will go out and don't feel like bathing. But when I get to understand that as you travel, especially traveling in public transport, you don't know what it is you're going to get on the seat, the person next to you. I remember this day a man came in the clinic and his pants was wet. Everything was soaked where he sit down, and he had a terrible STD. I said, how did you come? He said, in the maxi. And then some of our young girls, they like to dress in a nice tight skirt, whatever. And they would sit there, and it could be herpes, because once that liquid from the herpes, it bursts, and it touches your skin, it starts to set up. If you could bathe quickly, you mightn't get it. Many diseases we come in contact with us, but because of our hygienic practices, we don't get it, you know. We don't develop a lot, even though it's in the atmosphere that we breathe in. Thank God for strong immunity. But when you see we go out and we come back, I learn now, let us bathe. Let us bathe before we go to bed. Let us bathe before you make love with your wife or your husband. And sexual activity in our church is amongst married people. You all agree? It is amongst married people, and that is why we're having so many problems now. Because people think it is like who I like, you know, or who I could give the most drop in my car, or the lady who could bring the most sweet bread and give this gentleman. No. Some of us ladies are too lazy. Like when we had offshore drilling and we had people working. You see how I'm talking because I have had patients come in and I listen to what they say. and the gas tank to change. A woman cannot take a gas tank and change it. Her husband is working offshore. So she has the neighbor coming over. The neighbor is coming to help just to change the gas tank. So won't he want to pay sometime? So the husband is going to come back, but they had an affair. So they're rushing madly to test. Right? Frightened. Even I had a young girl. She was in her 20s. And she said, fantasize. What was the fantasy? She wanted to make love with 2 men one time. A trial. And so she said she just wanted that. She didn't know. She wanted to try. Since she was younger, she wanted to. And she went and she did it with 2 men. She said, every night I dream and I have HIV. I said, what, one was your husband? No. I said, they use any protection? No. And she was very, very scared. I felt for her. She came and she did the test. But one test will not be enough. She has to wait a period. All sorts of things so happen. And we have to keep a straight face, eh? You can't say, what? You crazy? You don't. That is how you can think in your mind. But when you have your clients, if you want them to open up to you, you have to just have a straight face and kind of encourage them and tell them, reassure them, okay, we'll do everything that we can. So we are talking now about there are over 30 types, and it can be presented or shown up, the signs and symptoms, under the heading of discharges. Sores, when discharges is because of the infection, you have discharge coming out of your private part or your genital area. Or you can have sores. That's our next way. You can have STDs showing up as sores coming out wherever. Then you can have lumps and bumps, right? And we'll go now into some of those. So sores. Anybody know what, when you have a STD, which one could cause sores? Anybody could think about one? Sore is a discharge. Gonorrhea is a discharge, sorry. HPV. Chlamydia, no. Sore. Right. Syphilis. Right? So syphilis and herpes. Syphilis can be treated and persons may become non-infectious. But blood testing for this continues years after. You get adequate treatment. And that is why in our antenatal clinics, we have mothers, we have compulsory testing of mothers. Because syphilis is one. Why? The side effect, the complications. You could lose the baby, right? You could have small babies for birth. The baby could born with the syphilis. So if they could cure it, it would help. Because if we didn't have all these tests going on, the amount of problems, the government already don't have money. And just to be spending so many millions of dollars on extra things that we could have prevented. Right? And the next thing about syphilis, after you are cured, you remain with a special test at any time they do it after. You know, if you get cut, how you have a sore on your body will never, although the sore is healed, you have a scar, right? In the blood, there's a certain test that even though you are cured, you are healed, it will always show up as positive, right? So syphilis is one, you'll say, well, that could cure. But that could be a telltale that will have you, if you go to the States and they do and they pull your blood and they see it positive, they are going to continue drawing to see how much, and they might even give you more injection. And it's penicillin injection. If you ever got a penicillin injection, when I was there, we used to lobby that they put some local anesthetic in it because it is so painful. You have to ask the patient, go and eat. Did you have breakfast? No, you have to eat. Because people faint away when they get it. It is so terrible. So you get one a week. I used to tell you, 1 week to get better from that pain. So it is not nice. Plus, you can be allergic to penicillin. It's one of those things that could put you into anaphylactic shock. which could cause death. Right? So we have to do a real testing, test those, put a little bit under the skin, make sure you're not allergic before you could get it. Herpes, the symptoms are treated, but a person is never free from the disease from the rest of his life. Wow, that's a virus causing it. And anytime you hear a virus stays with you. It's the man's best friend. It never leaves you. Just like you hear about HIV, it's a virus too. Right? Right, so we're going down there with lumps and bumps. This is the HPV now, human papilloma virus. Anybody could tell me something about this? When somebody has HPV, genital warts, what tests must a woman do? Pap smear, yeah. Because that is the cause of over 90% of cervical cancer. So that is a test that must be done on those patients. So this is the virus cannot be cured either. The warts can be surgically removed. They can be of any size, any shape. And in the clinic, we used to put something called podophyllin on these warts. Once a week, they would come, and you put this sort of acid on it, and it would, after a week, you're coming back every week. Sometimes it gets smaller, but sometimes, you know how the human body is. It gets larger. Sometimes people are allergic to it, right? Or they might have to have it cut according, either by laser. We don't do those treatments. You have to go over to the hospital. Some of them go privately to get it, but to get it burnt off, but that doesn't mean you won't have it again. They're all different shapes. I remember dealing with a girl a day, and you remember just touch is infective, very infectious. So I was there, and she just counseling her in the room, and she just jumped up and pull on her pants and touching it. I said, no, don't. And her hand was all over my desk. So we have to be aware of these things because we have to clean properly. We don't want an next patient come and get the infection. Just imagine you come and just because you sit down in a counseling room, you get a STD. You understand? You have to be. You might come with something else, you get something else. Right? So when somebody has that HPV, you really have to have them get in the pap smears, and doctor will tell you when to come. Under the discharges, we have the gonorrhea and the chlamydia. Anybody could tell me what is the next name for the gonorrhea? We have some local names. Claps, what again? Run-ins. Oh, you study that. Yes, run-ins. And those were the names, the local names you would have people about the gonorrhea. And this can also be treated with a broad spectrum antibiotic, the chlamydia. The gonorrhea, they have specific injections. You would come, they would take a swab, they would send it to the lab while you wait for the results, and then when they get it, they would see. But sometimes they don't get it positive as yet. So they will tell you, come back next week. And they would put it in like a sort of oven, and they would wait for it to grow. If they have just a few of the bacteria, they would let it grow so that the next week, if when you come, it is positive, you will get the injection. But once they are treating you for gonorrhea, they would also treat you for one that is masked. It's just like gonorrhea. The name is chlamydia. It is one of the more modern diseases, and they say this is the most prevalent. A lot of people have it. But it can easily be treated. So when somebody comes with positive gonorrhea, they give them tablets one time for chlamydia, right? Because the two of them, they move together. But there can be a lot of complications with these diseases. Very much so, right? They can have PID, pelvic inflammatory disease. Ectopic pregnancies is the next one you can have with those sterility of both males and females. So sometimes somebody get married, maybe in the young days they had gonorrhea, right? And then they get married and they're not having any children at all. They're thinking they're doing tests. I remember this girl came by me and the husband they're not getting his sperm count, they're not getting. And in my mind, I said maybe he had gonorrhea in his days and it's blocked so that the seminal fluid cannot pass, you know, and or the sperms cannot get, and he couldn't have children. So it is that all these things have complications, and we have to be very, very careful. Being raped is not nice. And when someone is raped, we have a certain protocol we follow. We will do the tests, all the tests we could do for them. They have to do it again in 6 weeks, and then they'll come back in 3 months, and then they will come back and we keep doing it for them because we don't know what they could pick up, right? It is very unfortunate, but that happens. I remember the security was sour. She said this man held her with a gun. She was a security guard going to work must be 5 o'clock. And he held her with his gun and he was walking through the streets. And other walking and carry quite in around West Savannah in the pavilion, whichever pavilion they have, I don't know. But she said, and while she was being raped, she was seeing people walking, and he had a gun. She can't scream, she can't do nothing. So I said, when he was holding you and telling you to walk, why couldn't you just let your foot stop moving? Like if you faint away. She said, I didn't think about that. He'd have to drag you. And ladies, remember that. If somebody holds you and tell you walk in a mall with